We are live on YouTube and Twix. We're going to bring in our Facebook group as well. That's Atlanta Falcons on SI. And then we'll get going. We're just a couple minutes late here, but not too bad. Had to catch up with Nick. I haven't talked to him in over a week. So It's good to be back. Facebook's spinning. Come on, Facebook. There we go. Welcome in, everybody. This is the Falcons Podcast. It is the last day of June. That means training camp is right around the corner. We'll be here before we know it. Got a lot of open training camps this year after being kind of shut out with the construction and stuff. Lots of open training camps at Flowery Branch this year we're looking forward to. Welcome back, everybody. We missed y'all. It's been about 2 weeks because we last went last Wednesday. You missed 2 shows and you're gone for 2 weeks. But it's good to see everybody back. And I'm Scott Kennedy. This guy over here is Nick. Nick, how are you doing this morning, my friend?
I'm doing pretty well. Went out and did a 9.5-mile hike yesterday on the north end of Mount Rainier National Park and saw 2 black bears. Wanted to brag to you a little bit about that. I know you've been dying to see one. They were about 70, 80 yards away and like in shadows. So I couldn't really get good pictures of them, but it was an open meadow. I look over, I'm like, is that a bear? See it move its head. And then I see a younger one pop its head up too. And I'm like, oh, 2 cinnamon colored black bears. That was awesome. And I went to an area called Grand Park, which is just an absolutely massive open field at Rainier. Just the mountains just sitting above it, and hiked over to a view over one of the glaciers. So it was good. Took the little kid with. The only issue is that I probably donated a half a quart of blood from the mosquitoes. Luckily, I had a giant, it was a car seat bug net, but it fit over the carrier for him. So he was living life. You know, he had the bug net on him, didn't have to walk or anything. It was good for him, but a lot of fun to be out there. And summer in the PNW is hard to beat. That's for sure.
Yeah, I've never seen a wild bear. It's kind of one of the things I still want to see. But you mentioned the little one. So 75 yards is probably a nice distance when you see a cub.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to get any closer because I got back from driving. My mom had been staying here. We've got it's fawn season here in the South. And a doe went after my 2 little dogs, flipped them both with the head in my backyard. So I'm like, oh, there's a fawn back there.
Yeah.
And then started running on the pool deck, and they're running in the house, and it still comes. And my mom, my badass mom, like shoves the deer out of the way as it just keeps on going. Like, yeah, we're not going to mess with babies. Not bear babies, not deer babies. So that was kind of an accident. They just happened to be in our backyard. We're not out there like taking selfies and stuff. Oh, look at the fawn. No, we're not those people.
No, that's pretty wild. I wouldn't mess with deer. I'm more afraid of the ticks they carry than anything. But
that's what we have in New Jersey. Anyway, it is a Falcons podcast. I know. Like I said, though, we haven't seen y'all. I haven't seen him in a while, so we're catching up a little bit on some of the cool things we've done. But we want to catch up with y'all. That's one of the reasons we go live. We go live every Monday and Wednesday because we like having the conversation with y'all. And he says, good morning, Scott and Nick and Falcons family. That's all y'all. So welcome in. Austin's here, and he says, I hope your wife's feeling better, and she's home. And she is home and is feeling better, trying to get some recovery going. And the countdown to camp begins. I think we're about just 2 weeks out for rookies report, too.
Yeah, and I just did want to brag and share the picture, but that's little guy and me sitting over and overlook with the Winthrop Glacier there in the background, blue skies. It was beautiful. It's good to get out there. If anybody ever is visiting the Seattle, Pacific Northwest area, Washington side, hit me up. I've planned probably like 20 trips for people coming out here. So it's a good time to come in the summer. But back to
Frank has some good well wishes for you too. And Yoga buddies. Your apostrophe is throwing me off here. Yoga buddies, what? Now I'm thinking. He says defense wins games, offense sells tickets. We can't stop any. We won't win. Period. Morning, guys. Love the content. Yeah, we saw a little bit of that last year, didn't we? Mm-hmm. You know, when Michael Penix took over. It's so funny watching box stat watchers, box score scouts. What are you guys excited for? He only had 3 touchdowns and 3 interceptions, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you didn't watch the games, did you? You know, 2 of those interceptions were like right off of other players, you know, and one of them would have been a touchdown. And, you know, the total yardage and stuff actually went up across the season average. So, and then obviously the throwing, the arm talent that you see, that's been there forever. You know, we talked about that when I started watching, you know, Bo Nix and Michael Penix play each other. I'm like, well, I know which one has what I think of as a more traditional NFL arm. it's that lefty out there. He can freaking sling it. We saw more from Bo. We saw more. This is going to sound really stupid, but you'll understand what I mean. We saw more NFL caliber throws in the NFL than we did in college from Bo Nix. Bo Nix was just a dink and duck system guy. We never got to see the arm strength on him. So, but Bo Nix had a really good rookie season and helped lead his team to the playoffs. And the hype is starting to build on Michael Penix Jr. from a lot of people when they start saying breakout players, fantasy players to watch, those kind of things. Michael Penix is on a lot of those lists.
Yeah, and understandably, I mean, exciting player. I've seen him play live back when he was Indiana, back in my Iowa days. Heck of an athlete. Unfortunately, I did see him, I think it was a game against Iowa where he threw like 5 picks and was pulled. That zone defense, it's not all his fault, right? The Indiana before this, was it? I can't think of the name of their current coach who's done a really good job with their program, but Signetti? I think Signetti actually.
I don't remember his name. He kind of reminds me like of an old Jim Trussell buttoned up guy, like with his sweater vest or whatnot. He looks old school, like 70s style.
He runs his mouth a little more than old school, but there's some old school that did too. But no, he's been good. But yeah, Penix should be on a lot of these lists. He's got a lot of hype. Also, the other reason, not to just diminish him, but with how bad this last quarterback class was, people are looking for shiny new things to be excited about. And we saw enough from Penix last season that I think he still qualifies in the shiny new thing, but some proof of concept as well. So excited. The league should be excited to see what happens with him.
Good morning, Terry. Hope you're doing well. Psalm out in California, getting up with us nice and early. Good morning. AJ, good to see you as well. A131 Sauce, Michael Baxter's here. Smooth C78 as well. Sam, great to see you as well. Dave, thanks for checking in. Broncos fan, checking in with us over here. Master Kioski is live. He's made it with us. Brian is here, and he's tagging his brother, maybe? Brother's son, Jonathan. So appreciate that, inviting some people in. Like I always say, tell a friend. Michael Ronquillo, the Ronk, is here. The Sunrise out in Arizona. And Terry Clark says, the Falcons haven't been shy in leaking how happy they are with Jalen Walker and Pierce. Doesn't look like they intend to run Jalen Walker at inside linebacker. Maybe that says how comfortable they are with Diablo. No, Terry, Pierce is there to rush the passer. They don't want to overwhelm a rookie. It's hard anyway, but I think he's got Caden Ellis in him if he needs to be moved around as a chess piece. And I think we'll see more of Caden Ellis moving around a little bit this year because your linebacker core is a little bit deeper now that Devon Diablo is there. So, but they're starting Walker on the edge. And if he Micah Parsons the thing, he'll stay on the edge, Nick. He won't be coming back inside at all. If he ends up, it's kind of like I said, I say Micah Parsons because Micah Parsons was thought of as an inside linebacker with 4.4 speed when he's coming out. It's like, okay, here's the next Brian Urlacher. Well, let's put him on the edge and see how it works. We know he can do that too. Oh, yeah, we're just going to leave him at edge. So if Jalen Walker has that type of success, he'll never play inside.
No, I mean, there will be some usage. Like they'll use Parsons as a mug, kind of delayed blitzer as well. So he'll be utilized as a chess piece, as a blitzer, not just purely lining up wide 9. But that's exactly what you do with Jalen Walker as well. You have to be a little creative. Again, when Falcons first drafted Jalen Walker, I said you got to eat your veggies on first and second down to get to where you can utilize him as a chess piece, as a pass rusher. But hopefully they've done enough with the resources they've thrown across the defensive line over the last 2 drafts that now it's up to the players themselves and the coaches in-house to develop those guys to get in those situations. But yeah, Walker, it'll be fun to see where these 2 guys land and how they are fully deployed this season.
Yeah, I saw PFF, I think, had the Falcons like 30th on the defensive line. I'm honestly okay with that. I am. I mean, you're talking your number 1 defensive line. Your only really proven defensive lineman out there as a starter is David Onyemata, and he didn't have a great season last year. And again, I always have to say this afterwards. So yes, I get accused of repeating myself, but I do repeat myself because I stick to my guns on this stuff. I don't waffle. David Onyemata was among 25 defensive players who had worse seasons in 2024 than they did in 2023. So, a bounce back year for him isn't out of the question either. But I do like they've got bodies and they've got depth that I feel like someone, because they've got enough people there that they've addressed the problem in the last couple of years, that I really feel like someone will step up. You're hoping it's Rook. Rook Arroyo is kind of penciled in as a starter. Brendan Dorlus should be a depth piece. Taquan Graham, I think, is one of the more underrated players on the Atlanta Falcons. He is a solid interior defensive lineman. So there's 4 right there. Now we can get, LaCale London. Once I start getting to the third string and down, I kind of forget sometimes who's still there and who isn't. But there's 6 interior linemen that can go there. We're not even talking about Zach Harrison yet, who can slide inside sometimes as well. So I'm okay with them saying that they're 30th because there really is only one proven starter, and that's Onyemata. But I do believe there are enough bodies there that the defensive line should be serviceable at worst.
Yeah, only time will tell, right? We need proof of concept, and you kind of went with a shotgun approach with a lot of the defensive line there. And it's kind of like what we said multiple times last year with Denver, who's supposed to be terrible defensively. A little bit of a game of Yahtzee with every single one of those guys. It's not going to be binary, good or bad. It's on a spectrum of some sort, but you could definitely roll a few, high numbers and end up with some good players there. But you're right. Rook is the one that we are heavily breathing, hoping for the best with because of what they invested in him and just the raw physical gifts. And again, it's not all on where he was drafted. It's not all on him as a player. We need the coaching staff, defensive line coach, to foster and develop these guys as well. So we'll see. I've been, coach pilled a bit, Scott, with what the Broncos have done over the last 2 years, and also what Iowa's done for a number of years when they have, the 35th ranked recruiting class, but constantly in the top 20 and doing pretty well. So it's not just draft; it's draft and develop, equal parts.
No, I said, doing recruiting and watching, and going back and grading yourself on these type of things. I always said that a year of experience was worth half a star. So if I've got a bunch of 3-star offensive linemen, but they're 5th-year seniors going against 18-year-old 5-star freshmen, my 5th-year seniors are gonna whip you up front. Mm-hmm. Your guy in 3 years is going to get drafted higher. Yeah. But right now, the experience means something out there. Getting back to the title of the show, I titled it "Expectations Continue to Build for Atlanta Falcons Quarterback Michael Penix Jr." A lot of this came from this story we have on Falcons SI, on Atlanta Falcons on Sports Illustrated. It was Chris Trapasso, and he's pretty excited about this. You can tell. He says, "You could feel it every other possession or so with Penix. His talent was undeniably and noticeably more impressive than Kirk Cousins. The rawness of his game was palpable too. His final contest of the 2024 season painted the clearest picture. He only completed 55% of his passes, but he had a totally ridiculous 7 big-time throws with 0 turnover plays." And this is what I wrote after the fact was, the shorter timing routes are going to be part of that as well, which he never really got to do. The first time he really threw a practice rep to a first-team receiver was the Wednesday he started before week 16. So I feel like the efficiency should improve with experience, but I don't want to take that. If you're throwing 7 big-time throws with 0 turnover plays, you're going to be a dangerous damn offense with the weapons that they have and opening up the backside of this thing for underneath routes for even Ray McLeod. But you think the biggest beneficiary is going to be Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier in the running game.
Yeah, I mean, the arm talent is undeniable. The question is more so, like you mentioned, the timing routes and also just the down-to-down accuracy. There'll be plays where he's pretty wild with some of that, and you hope that he can clean it up. But he's had a lot of reps, and it's an issue coming out of Washington. We saw it a few times last season. So we will see. That's going to be big as far as he can be good. Can he be great? Those are the big questions there. And Scott, I mean, we've kind of seen him throw last season, but is it crazy to say that Penix already might have a top 5 arm strength in the league as far as all the quarterbacks that they're ranked? I mean, you got Allen, you got Mahomes. After that, I mean, it's kind of Stafford is still up there, but
I still don't think Mahomes has that fastball. I don't think of him in that league. But maybe analytics would show me different, But I don't think of him as the rifleman. Like I feel like it's his ability to deliver from multiple angles is what makes him so dangerous. Not necessarily that Brett Favre, John Elway, those are guys I grew up with, y'all. So apologies. Throw it through a brick wall, but it takes them time to figure out when to not try and throw it through a brick wall. But, I think Herbert has an arm strength that's just like, whoa. And Matthew Stafford can still sling it. I mean, Matthew Stafford's got one of the best arms I've ever gotten to scout in my high school to college days. But no, I don't think it's out of the question to say that there's not many quarterbacks in the NFL that will be able to make the same throws that Michael Penix Jr. can. Yeah. Now, can he make the ones more consistently that every quarterback in the NFL can throw? That's where you become from a thrower to a passer.
Yeah, no doubt. Anthony Richardson also, I guess he's still a starter, so he qualifies, but he's got a long way to go in the quarterbacking. Mahomes, I think he's still got the arm. I mean, you go back to Texas Tech, and it's crazy. He's throwing it everywhere with a lot of velocity, but I think a lot of it is the lack of weapons that Kansas City had that could decompress the defense. The fact that he was still efficient despite that was, I mean, I hate the guy because don't like the Chiefs. I'm tired of them, but he's unbelievable. So, but yeah, Josh Allen, Herbert, Penix is right there. The arm is unbelievable. Some of the high level throws are wow.
From him. It's there again. You see it immediately. Some of the throws that he makes, you can see why people are excited about. The biggest question I had coming in, and you don't even really want to mention it, but was the injury concerns.
Yeah,
he's got a first round arm. There's no question about that. But he had, was it 4 seasons? Or was it 3 different season-ending injuries while he's at Indiana, but he played the last couple of seasons healthy at Washington. So those are a concern. And let's just, what are you going to do? I mean, that's a concern for everybody, right? I mean, if he plays 2 full years healthy, then he's past him. It's not like a hamstring injury or, one of those. It's not like the nagging injuries that you have that you can't keep on the field. It's not the Troy Anderson type of things. Troy Anderson, I'm more worried about Troy Anderson being able to get on the field and stay on the field than I am about Michael Penix.
Yeah.
Does that, I mean, that's fair, isn't it?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, just the history of injuries. You are more worried about Michael Penix because it's the quarterback.
I know. Yeah, I know. Yeah. It's more, you're more worried because if he goes down, it's worse for the team for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And we got Terry Clark says we haven't seen a downfield completion in 40 to 60 yards in 10 years. And that was Matt's one first. I'm not sure what the Matt's one is. I'm sure it's Matt Ryan, but
yeah, I do want to say Matt had one of those.
Yeah.
Matt threw there's some, you go back and look at some of the highlights. Matt threw some good deep balls. Mm-hmm. There's some good ones in there. And again, I just think you're going to see so much more space underneath. If Kyle Pitts can get on the field, he should have more room to work underneath, to work on crossing routes and slants. If I've got Drake London singled up on the outside and Darnell Mooney running fly routes, the underneath stuff should open up a little bit for sure. So I think the offense, but going back to one of the original comments, sells tickets, but you're still leaning into the defense. But we'll get into that in a little bit. And I want to say Almighty Push. That feels like a newer name. Thank you for the super chat. Coming in hot. So thank you, sir. It says, if Cousins is slinging it during the preseason and looks 100% back, do we pump the brakes on Michael Penix Jr.? No. This is done. This is decided. This is the same thing basically in reverse that happened last year. It did not matter how Michael Penix looked in the preseason. Kirk Cousins was going to be the starting quarterback. Now, here's the thing about if it changes. Why didn't they? Because this is a little bit, my thought on this is a little bit different than it was last year, because I've been critical of why didn't they go to Penix sooner last year. If Penix struggles, the team's going to struggle. I don't think this defense is good enough to win games. So if Penix struggles early, and you're talking, you're looking at a 3-6 or something crazy like that, you stick with him. You try and work it out, because you're not going to save your jobs anyway. With Kirk Cousins at this point, you're not building for the future with Kirk Cousins, because you're in trouble as a job. You put all of their eggs in the Michael Penix basket. This is Michael Penix's team, for better, for worse, this season. And it certainly isn't going to matter what happens during the preseason.
Yeah, this is Penix team. All the indication from the front office, the players, coaching staff, they're full steam ahead, and Cousins wouldn't be here if they found a suitor for him. What matters in the preseason, Scott, is if another quarterback goes down,
Right.
opening a spot for him. But as far as what's going on, unless, of course, Penix deals with an injury, I mean, it's always things can happen. I'll knock on wood behind me here. But that is always the concern. But no, this is Penix's team, a new era, and they're putting their eggs in this basket. I mean, both the coaching staff and the front office. If you go 9-8 with Kirk Cousins, 8-9, you're fired. If you go 8-9 with promise from Penix, you're in a little bit more trouble, but at least you can sell that. So this is not only, about the future, but also the decision makers need this to work out and be Penix at this point to put the Kirk Cousins error behind them.
Yeah, it's and Kirk Cousins is gone next year regardless. No matter what happens, there's still a lot of people that think he'll play for somebody else by the end of this season. I've seen it in NFL.com's bold predictions that they're saying that if an injury happens in the next 2 months, Kirk Cousins' trade value actually increases, an injury from another team, and that's true. We said the same thing kind of about Tyler Algier. Is Tyler Algier trade bait? I wrote it up in February. I'm like, not in February, he's not in March, he's not even in April, he's not. Maybe in September he's trade bait, but even then you're not going to be out of anything. The only way Tyler Algier is trade bait is if you're out of the running for the playoffs by the trade deadline at the beginning of November. Things would have to go really, really, really bad for that to happen, because all you do is hover around 500 and you're in the wild card race on this one. But Almighty Push, thank you so much for the super chat. Brandon Frazier checking in over on X. Good to see. Says great morning. 10 more Sundays before football. I can't wait. Yeah, they put a graphic out on that one that we were that close. But hell, preseason's 8-8. That's I can hold my breath for 4 weeks, man. Yeah. That's like in 5 weeks. So that's coming up soon. In 5 weeks, we got preseason football, and hopefully I'll be more excited about preseason, even with Raheem Morris as the coach, because there are so many new faces. Even with 90 players on the team, when they go to preseason, they have to play some of these new guys. They have to, because there's so many of them, especially on defense. And I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I mean, preseason, you never really get the full picture there. You're playing shell coverage, basic defense stuff. We always kind of fall in love with that third string defensive lineman who's dominating, third string offensive lineman who are going to be working at Penske in a couple of years. God bless you, Penske. I don't know. But should be really exciting. A lot of questions, a lot of youth, and some answers, hopefully moving forward, which is a pretty overall kind of a muddy picture on the defensive side and just Penix in general.
Keith, good to see you over on YouTube. He says, I remember Jerry Rice talked about adjusting to a left-handed quarterback. How big is that for wide receivers to adjust, in your opinion? Nick, I think you played some tight end. I played a little bit of wide receiver. And the ball, it's not necessarily the spin on the ball, but it's what the spin on the ball does. On a long enough pass, especially on a long pass, the spin will actually rotate the ball a little bit as it starts coming down. The perfect spiral doesn't stay on line the whole time. The spin will actually rotate the ball a little bit. It takes maybe 2 catches to adjust to that. I mean, it's not a thing. The reason why don't we see more left-handed quarterbacks? It's the weird spin on the ball. No. We don't see more left-handed quarterbacks because guys with 90-mile-an-hour left-handed fastballs play baseball. 3 times more lefty pitchers are in major leagues than compared to left-handed people. Like 1 in 10 people are left-handed. 3 in 10 are left-handed pitchers. So there's 3 times more. If you're 6 foot tall and you can throw 90 miles an hour, hell, if you can throw 85 miles an hour, you're playing baseball. I just mentioned 3 out of 10. There's 15-man rotations these days, 15-man pitching staffs on 30 teams. What's that, 150? Just, roughly, just in the majors of left-handed pitchers? Let alone the left-handed hitting aspect of that, and you're a left-handed thrower. So if you're left-handed, brother, you're playing baseball, and there's few exceptions, obviously, but you dump 1,090-mile-an-hour fastball left-handed pitchers into football, you'd see more left-handed quarterbacks. So that's more of the thing. The spin on the ball is nothing. That doesn't mean anything. It's an adjustment that might take a warm-up, and that's about it.
Yeah, honestly, with Penix, the bigger adjustment is going to be just how fast it comes on them with the speed of the football and just working your gloves and understanding the timing of it, especially coming from Kirk Cousins. So I think it's more the velocity and the pain in hitting your hands rather than the left-handed aspect. I do think also it's kind of a weird thing with the Falcons, just an interesting tidbit. Isn't Ryan Newsel a left-handed snapper as well? So
I think so, but yeah, I don't know. That seems like a bigger adjustment, but that'd take 2 seconds as well,
Yeah, I mean, reps, it's the NFL, right?
Yeah.
One bad snap and you're in trouble. But yeah, the left-handed snapper to the left quarterback. I don't know how many times we've had that in history. So kind of a fun, nerdy fact for the Falcons fans out there.
The left-handed thing, the spin on the ball, that's just a talking point. The reason why there aren't more left-handed quarterbacks is because there's more left-handed pitchers. That's why.
Selection
Don't let
bias.
anybody tell you any different in here. Let me see here. There's some talk in here as far as like the preseason and stuff. Mad scientists in here talking about, who plays more, Kirko or Penix in the preseason. Now, I don't expect to see Penix in the preseason. I don't. I'd like to. But I'm okay with that if you don't, as long as you don't, because I don't expect them to come out like they did against Pittsburgh in week 1. Holy cow. I wasn't quite apoplectic week 1, but I was pretty damn critical of the analytics that came out of that game, where it's like, okay, when they were in the pistol, it was a run 95% of the time. When they were in the shotgun, it was a pass 95% of the time. It's like you can't have that, man. You can't tip your hand that well.
Yeah.
And they looked just awful against Pittsburgh, but they turned around, and Zach Robinson finished with a number 6 offense in total offense, despite some of the problems that this team faced in the quarterback position. They had a rookie quarterback, and they had Kirk go AWOL for 5 weeks. So they still finished with number one. When I say guys I'm excited to see, I'm expecting to see, do we see a little bit of Divine Diablo? Maybe. Do we see some Troy Anderson? Maybe. Do we see some Kobe Bryant? Yeah, we should. I'm excited to see that. Do we see some Jordan Fuller out there? Do we see some Xavier Watt? I don't know that we'll see the rookie edge rushers, but they should get some time too. I would want them to see some time. We may not see I'm getting confused now between my Georgia edge rushers now that I've been out of this for a week. Leonard Floyd, Lorenzo Carter. We're not going to see Lorenzo Carter. Do we see Leonard Floyd? Probably not. Probably won't. Do we see AK? Probably. Do we see some Dorless finally? Brandon Dorless? Yeah, I bet we see some Brandon Dorless. So those are the kind of things I'm looking forward to on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, I want to see some of these younger guys who have been promising but not fully unleashed just yet. So hopefully we see some Dorless. Want to see your guy Brandon Graham, Taquan Graham, not Brandon Graham, retired. Good career there. I also want to see if we can get some health from Troy Anderson, maybe some of these undrafted guys as well. I mean, Cream will rise to the top. And also want to see, it's harder for the secondary, right? Because again, like you mentioned earlier, you're playing a lot of shell coverage, but something we've talked about with this defense is outside of AJ Terrell, a lot of questions out there. So hopefully you see some guys step up, and it'd be great if one of these younger players came up and maybe really pushed D. Alford, really pushed Mike Hughes. You got Billy Bowman. Could he be somebody? Kobe Bryant. I know that Falcons fans are really excited about him as an undrafted free agent.
So there should be, it should be much more entertaining to watch.
Mm-hmm.
Last year I watched like the first game. I didn't watch the other games. They were like, the times were not great for me to watch them for other things I was doing, baseball or something. I'm not sure that I didn't, I was like, if they don't care about the preseason, why should I? Why should we? The only guys on the field are guys that aren't going to be on the team in September. It's all back end roster cut guys.
Do you think that
John Earl says I saw something this morning on Facebook about raving about JD Bertrand? Yeah, Daniel Flick had a kind of a puff piece of Raheem Morris and the guys talking about JD Bertrand, coming from the Atlanta Falcons and that type of stuff. But who hasn't Raheem Morris talked positively about in his year plus here. Richie Grant, I owe you an apology. Big things from Richie Grant. So, I prefer to judge with my eyes and then watch what they do, not what they say. Usually, you can't always say that, but they went into this offseason knowing they couldn't count on Landman, Bertrand, and Anderson, and went and signed Divine Diablo. They went knowing they couldn't necessarily count on Braylon Trice and Lorenzo Carter and Arnold McKetty, and they went and signed Leonard Floyd and drafted 2 first-round edges. They knew they couldn't count on DeMarco Helms to come back, and they went and signed Jordan Fuller and drafted Xavier Watts. So what did they do is they saw some things that concerned them on this roster. By God, they addressed them this offseason. Now, whether it works out or not, we don't know. But the process this offseason for addressing holes on the roster and making a change at defensive coordinator are good. They were good. Mm-hmm. Now, let's see how it works out. We don't know that they'll work out, but if you do the right things for long enough, you will be a winning team. It's okay to do the obvious sometimes, Nick.
Yeah. I mean, that's football, right? You can do what you tell them before the snap. We're blitzing here, or we're rushing forward. We're still going to get after you, or we're going to run the football. If the obvious works, there's a reason it's been tried and true for a long time. So, yeah, no issue with that at all. Master Kioski's giving you some credit here, Scott. I know one of our first episodes is talking about lefties and how the lefties go in there. So I know you've been on that one for a bit. You might be biased, with the kid in baseball and pushing the baseball stuff.
I'm left-handed.
Oh, well, there you go. There's
I throw left-handed.
Yeah.
And I should have played baseball.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I've got the arm structure to do it. Like just growing up playing, my elbow starts hurting and stuff. I don't know if I would have had the arm to do it, but I should have played baseball.
Yeah.
I was fast and torquey as far as I could hit a driver 325 yards when I was in my 20s, and I could play softball in my 20s, and one of those guys that could rip the ball through a softball 350 yards. I should have played baseball, but I had fun with soccer, but I should have played baseball.
Yeah. Not too late to get into distance sports there, Scott, though. That's your peak now. Let's get on that bike. We got Brad Clark coming in from East St. Louis. Says, what's up? Good to see you. Says he can't wait for football to start. Yeah, being from East St. Louis, it's hot in the summer, so I understand kind of wanting the fall to get there. Says they're going to the Chiefs-Falcons game last year. They're going to the Falcons-Commanders this year. Long drive, but worth it. Love the atmosphere. Yeah, how long of a drive is that? 10 hours? 12 hours? East St. Louis to Atlanta? I'm not sure, but that's a long one. Have a lot of fun. That should be a good one. I mean, that Falcons-Commanders game last year.
You can be from Atlanta to Cincinnati in 8 hours.
8 hours?
Yeah, to Cincinnati, but you gotta go a little bit farther left to get over to East St. Louis.
So 10, 11 hours maybe, but yeah, that Commanders Falcons game last year was an absolute barn burner, even though the results didn't play out great. Jaden Daniels, Penix back and forth. So that should be a good one. Commanders defensive line lost a lot as well. So I'm not sure. I'm buying Jaden Daniels.
Nick, the only team the Commanders have been able to consistently beat the last 5 years are the Falcons.
Yeah. But,
Taylor Heineke, we turned him into Taylor Heisman is what we did.
Yeah. I don't know how much predictive power is then in that, all the different regimes and whatnot, but it's definitely frustrating for how bad the commies have been. So other than last season, of course, but that should be a heck of a game. And I don't know if we have all the nationally televised games yet, or if that's a night game or anything off the top of my head. But I mean, Penix versus Daniels that's top of the ticket type of battle. So exciting.
I think that one is one of the special games because the Falcons got a lot of primetime / solo games. They got like 6 of them or something this year. So, there's some expectations that the Falcons should be a team to watch, an exciting team to watch based on the schedule on that one. Jordan Sheffield, thank you for the super chat. Help keep the lights on. Help keep my forehead nice and shiny. Certainly appreciate it. Coming in and donating to the show, especially in June when things slow down for us. It means a lot. So thank you for thinking of us and thank you for being part of the show. Terry says the offense sets up huge for a huge year for Bijan. You guys think he ever gets 2,000 yards rushing in a season for us for 1 year? There's part of me that wants to answer this, Terry, by saying, I hope not. I want to see Bijan for 6 or 7 years, 8 years. And I don't know if you have a 2,000-yard season in you, how much more you're going to have in the tank after that. There's a few guys that they're just different. Derrick Henry, he's just different. That's kind of the exception that proves the rule. And Bijan certainly qualifies. He is a special running back. But what I want out of Bijan is more efficiency. I want a similar amount of touches with more yards and more touchdowns. So I want them to use him more effectively, not necessarily more often, because he touched the ball a lot last year. He wasn't underused by any stretch of the imagination. I'd like to see him not running into stack boxes quite so often and burying his head and jamming his neck in there. I want to see him in space more often, and I want to see him used more effectively, and then let the chips fall where they may, Nick.
Yeah. I mean, for me, it's the pass game. That's the big area where you want Bijan to become essentially the next Christian McCaffrey, ideally, where he can be flexed out. We talk about the Falcons team with questions in the depth of the wide receiver room, and you got Pitts, of course, who can play wide receiver, but there is, as far as the slices of pie, the pie graph of target distribution, Bijan could take a large amount. He could be number 3 in your receptions this season. So I really want to see him develop and become more of a weapon in the pass game. Now, granted, the offensive line, you have to trust them. You have to trust Penix to know how to manipulate the pocket and get rid of the football without having that running back in there as that fail-safe for protection. But that's what I'm most excited about with Bijan, and protecting him, having Tyler Algier and some of those, battering your head into a wall, protect him there, but get him in space. He's not, Jahmyr Gibbs or like the absolutely most explosive athlete, but he's just so smooth and controls space. He's probably one of the best spatial awareness manipulation players in all of football right now. So I'd love to see him become even more of a factor in the pass game and help out Penix that way. Not necessarily just dump offs, but I'm talking Texas routes, angle routes, wheel routes. Have him pre-snap out to the slot. I think there's a lot of potential with him as a more of this hybrid receiver running back.
Yeah. And again, he's still young. That I want him to be a Falcon for a long time. We've seen these guys fall off. When Devontae Freeman got his second contract, for a moment, he was the highest paid running back in the NFL, and he was no longer one of the best running backs in the NFL. He fell off. So I'd rather see less of Bijan Robinson for a longer period of time where he's making more big plays. And I don't know, it's easier said than done. That's for sure. But as we've talked about, as Mad Scientist says, by the time Penix keeps throwing down the field, the Bucs won't be stacked as long, and that's the hope. Because who else is that going to open things up for? It's going to open things up more for Kyle Pitts underneath. If Kyle Pitts, for me, it's more about the touchdowns. He's option right now at best option 4 in this offense at best, behind Drake, behind Darnell Mooney, behind Bijan Robinson. At best, Kyle Pitts is 4th. But if he has 4 catches a game and a touchdown every other game, and he's averaging 15, 16, that's 60 yards. Well, hell, 4 catches times 17 games is 68 catches. 60 times 17 is 1,000. And he gets 8 touchdowns. Yeah, I'll take that.
Yeah.
If Michael Penix has 25 to 30 completions every game, he's throwing 40 times. There's no reason why Kyle Pitts can't have 4 and have more space to operate.
Yeah. We'll see. I mean, again, the pie chart, where the targets all go. I'm excited. Gosh, am I still, you kind of talk about Kyle Pitts there. Maybe I'm the internal optimist here because I don't have as many chips emotionally in it, but I'm excited to see what he can be just because the potential is still there. I haven't felt burnt enough from him. He's still really young, and we had that rookie season. Now you got a quarterback who might be able to manipulate the space a little bit more. Granted, all the routes that he runs aren't necessarily the most consistent. Like, he's one of the best corner route players in the NFL, but that's like one of the least efficient routes to run in football. But yeah, Pitts, man, I'm not ready to quit on him. You say that, and I still get a little bit of what he could be. That'd be great. And you talk about the breakout offensive player. I mean, Pitts is the one who I probably would lean on. I think we had Mooney re-breakout last year. London's already
there
here.
aren't any.
Yeah. I guess it's actually Penix, right?
yeah, Penix for sure. Yeah, Penix other than Penix, because again, Mooney had 1,000, he hit like 992 or something, 960. Mooney had a great season last year. I can't believe how overlooked he's gotten. And I know, Nick, you've heard me say this all the time, that if the rising tide, raises all ships, it's kind of the opposite. There have been some really, really good Atlanta Falcons that have not gotten their due because they played for the Atlanta Falcons, who weren't going to the playoffs. You miss the playoffs for the 7 years. It takes a little bit longer for people to realize how good Chris Lindstrom is. People have blown off completely the season that Darnell Mooney had last year. If they need Kyle Pitts to step up. Well, not really. If Kyle Pitts doesn't play a snap for the Atlanta Falcons in 2025, this is still a playoff caliber offense. Now, if he becomes close to who they drafted to be, now it becomes a top 5 caliber offense. That'd be great. But, when you start talking about, Drake's had a big year. Darnell had a big year. Bijan's had a big year. There's your 3 weapons. So then you go, I think I saw Kurt Benkert. How do you pronounce his name? Benkert?
Yeah. Yep.
Which one? I said 2.
Kurt Benkert.
Benkert. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's like, don't be surprised if Matthew Bergeron ends up being a Pro Bowl type guard this year. So your breakout player might be third-year pro Matthew Bergeron at guard. I know that's not all that exciting, but you are returning everybody on offense. There's no really new players out there that you're looking to get going. So we're going to get going here just in a moment. So I want to kind of hit on something real quick. The CBS put out a list of the top 30 players that never won a Super Bowl. And I was a little surprised to not see Julio Jones on there. Mm-hmm. And I was shocked that Calvin Johnson wasn't on there. Calvin Johnson, to me, is in the argument for top 3 wide receivers of all time. It looked to me like they almost just went by production, like overall numbers. And even then, Julio still has a pretty good argument.
Yeah. But
if I'm talking best, for me, the 3 best wide receivers of all time, Jerry Rice, Randy Moss, and Calvin Johnson. If I've got a game to play, I want one of those. Those are the 3 I'm going to pick from as far as like, I need to win a game today. And that's, Nick, how I determine best, not longevity, but I have a game to win today. Who's my team? And Julio wasn't on there. It was, let me see here. It was Chris Carter, Steve Largent, Terrell Owens, Larry Fitzgerald, and Randy Moss. Now, obviously, I got no problem with Terrell Owens, the numbers anyway. Larry Fitzgerald, phenomenal. He's a phenomenal football player. I wanted to do a shirt that said horseshoes, hand grenades, and Larry Fitzgerald, just when close counts. And then Randy Moss, obviously, is arguably the greatest receiver of all time. So no problem there. And I think where Julio gets dinged a little bit is he's way down the list on touchdowns. He's like 61st in touchdowns because they used him like a running back. It's like, wait, why isn't Julio in the game? And then they show a graphic of him on the sidelines, and it's like 5 catches for 60 yards, and he's over there taking oxygen because he got them down there, and now he's out of the game inside the 20.
Yeah. I mean, kind of a weird thing with him. Frustration I remember during the fantasy years, for sure, because he was always a good player, and you could see the talent, but just finishing in the red zone, not always, he wasn't out there, right? So it wasn't exactly his fault. But, I mean, anybody who watched him would know that he's one of the best 5 receivers in the last decade. Should be on the first or probably second team, all-decade team as well. So, yeah, he should be definitely mentioned it, but I mean, it's kind of hard to ring the bell too loud about Julio Jones when you don't have Calvin Johnson on there. So
again, I think Calvin for me is, again, I'm a Jerry Rice guy. I'm loyal, and I grew up with Jerry Rice, just like I'm a Joe Montana guy. When we start talking about greatest of all times, but Nick, it's heard me say enough. I won't argue levels of elite.
Yeah.
So if you say, who do you think the best player of? I mean, I think Jerry Rice is arguably the best football player of all time. That I would say Jerry Rice, and if you were saying no, I think it's Randy Moss, I wouldn't argue with you. If you were to say, I think Calvin Johnson, I wouldn't argue with you. I think those are arguments you can't ever win. They're too subjective, and those are good people to put in there. Now, Julio, now you say Steve Largent. Did you know Steve Largent was 11th all time with 100 touchdowns?
No, that's crazy.
I mean, he played a long time, but still. And then Chris Carter comes in 4th. He had 130. But you remember, Buddy Ryan said all he ever does is catch touchdown passes. But Steve Largent comes in, and meanwhile, Julio comes in, I think, 61st in touchdowns. But if I'm lining up a game tomorrow, do I want Julio Jones or do I want Steve Largent?
Julio.
I want Julio. I want Julio Jones.
Yeah.
Now, I'd take the argument I'd rather have Chris Carter. Okay, I'll listen to that. Chris Carter's great. But I'd rather have Julio than Steve Largent, and I'd rather have Calvin Johnson than everybody on that list not named Randy Moss.
Yeah. Oh, man, yeah. Give me Julio. I mean, Steve Largent, I guess maybe the argument is on better. I can't even say better teams because the Falcons had that Super Bowl run as well. So I don't know. Julio's got to be on there. Who did the list? Where was it from? We got Curtis. Good morning.
It was, CBS. Go ahead and read it. I'll look it back up here. It was Brian Giardo from CBS Sports, best players, and it was a list of, Matt Ryan was on there. I'm okay with that, and I didn't even look to see who else was on there other than the receivers, but the two best players that immediately come to mind that never won a Super Bowl ring for me, well, one of them's Calvin Johnson. The other one was Barry Sanders, and then Dan Marino. Those are my top 3 right there. I always thought it was interesting. It's like because what a big fan of Matthew Stafford I was. I think Matthew Stafford, when the word generational gets used way too much, but for me, he was a 10-year guy. He was a generational type of talent with that arm. I'm like, they could have 3 of the best players ever at their position and never even make a Super Bowl with Calvin Johnson, Barry Sanders, and Matthew Stafford. But Curtis, good to see you.
Yeah.
Says, good morning, Scott, Nick, and Falcons Nation. It's been a minute. Hope all is well with your family, Nick.
Doing better. Not 100%. A little nervous. The mother-in-law is leaving today, but happy to have the wife home, and the fevers have gone away. So that's positive. But need to get her more confident and back on our feet a bit still.
Yeah. So speaking of going away, we are going to go away as well. We're happy to hear that Natalie is feeling better and improving.
Yeah.
I'm sure she's not where she wants to be yet, but on the road back, I mean, that was a tough road that y'all have gone through this summer. But we are going to get out of here. I want to say thank you to our super chat superstars. Curtis coming in late. Hope you're doing well too, Curtis. And want to say thank you again to Almighty Push. And there was nothing wrong with this question. I saw you catching a little flack in this. There's nothing wrong with this question. Appreciate you throwing it in there. Because again, you got a $40-something million quarterback with the resume that Kirk Cousins has. And that's the problem that Kirk has, is he's not going to get a chance to compete for the starting position. It's settled. It's done. And he wants a place where he could at least compete, which is understandable, but he's going to be paid $100 million. So suck it up, Buttercup. Jordan, thank you as well. We'll be back on Wednesday as we head into the 4th of July weekend. And then when we get out of the 4th of July weekend, hell, it'll almost be training camp time.
Yeah.
So missed y'all. It's good to be back after this last week. Hope y'all are having a good June, finish of your June and finish of your summer. But we're out of here. Y'all have a great rest of your week. We'll see you on Wednesday.
Peace.